Hello, everyone. Good morning. Good morning to you, Lori.
Hey, good morning, Lauren, and how are you today?
I'm doing good. Thank you. Thank you so much. I'm hoping that you're doing extremely well as everyone who's coming into the room. The numbers just continue to go up. So that's exciting.
It sure is. And, can I say I just love our frequent flyers. Welcome, new guests. I love our frequent flyers. I feel like we got one big happy family going on now. And,
Totally do.
I'm really humbled and somewhat amazed that everybody tunes in every week. It's really awesome. The fear when you start something, when you start something, it's new and it's exciting, even an exercise program, right? And then after a while, you're like, can I do this every week? Can I make this still interesting? Well, now that I'm learning how to be a talk show host, I see that, that's one of the things, trying to make sure you're always new and exciting and interesting. And so I'm just happy to think or see that people believe that it is new, exciting, and still interesting. So thank you for that.
Well, that's the thing. You're so good at what you do. And so it's like, regardless of what path you're on in terms of, your entrepreneurial path, you're able to make it all relevant. And so, and break it down in such a way that we can understand it.
But I always tell people, everybody says, you're so good. You're so good. And I just tell them I'm old. I've been doing it a long time. You do something long enough, you're gonna get friggin' good at it, right?
You better be good at it, huh?
I started my first company at, I think, somewhere around 25. That's the number I usually choose. And here I am. I just had a birthday. I keep forgetting how old I am. Because you lie so much, you have to do the math. I am 58. Like, Lauren, that's friggin' ancient,
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah. So that's why I tell people I'm just friggin' old. I've been doing it a long time.
You can always just do your birthdays in reverse too.
Oh, I do. In fact, I have to literally do the math because I forget. It's just an irrelevant thing to me. My cat doesn't look like she ages, and she's, only 3. So, in fact, when I got my last cat, and we'll start right now, but when I got my last cat, I've always had a cat. Everybody knows I have my cat. She goes in the stroller. She's in the backpack with me all the time. She has a car seat. She goes on my bike. Everybody knows about my cat. But it was funny because every time I would get a cat, I would think, oh, they only live 16, 15 when I'm this age, and when Babu, my last cat, passed away and I got Babu, I started looking at it, I thought, oh my God, I only got a cat and a half left. So I've decided my cat and a half left of life is going to be friggin' awesome. Okay.
Oh, look, we just got a comment from Kitty. That's funny. She says, I love the fact that you think you are old at 58. I've been running our business for a long time and I'm now 75, and she loves the program.
So awesome. Do you know, it's interesting because I'm around a lot of older people, and people will say, well, I'm old, and I'll be like, well, how old are you? 70? And they're like, no, I'm 85. And I'm like, what? I've met some people that are like 99 and just walking around on the beach and stuff. So it's amazing. Yeah, I feel like it's great because you get to a certain age where you understand stuff. I would not want to go back to that stupid, naive Lori of yesteryears, by no means. But we better get going. So, Lauren, while I'm on this, before you do your launch, so guys, we're going to have a special special unknown show. Okay. So the guest I was going to have, unfortunately, is not going to be able to attend. So guess what? It's me, guys. So we're going to have a lot of fun. And before you go into the different housekeeping, I'm going to hang out in the chat with you guys today. So we're not going to use the questions. I'm going to hang out at the chat. And Lauren, go ahead and do your intro and then come back to me, and I'm going to tell you what we're going to do. And we're going to get you involved too, Lauren, because you're going to be watching the chat with me. But we're just going to basically have a chit chat with Lori today.
I love it. Okay, well, let me hurry up and get through this intro so we can get started. Okay, give me 2 seconds as I share my screen. And again, thank you everyone for joining us. We're excited to have you, as Lori mentioned. My name is Lauren Simpson, and I am with the SBDC, or the Small Business Development Center. We're a national program with over 1,000 locations throughout the country. So regardless of what state you're in, you should be able to get connected with a local SBDC office, or quasi-local, right? And you'll want to do so because we offer no cost services to local small businesses. And they're at no cost to you because your tax dollars have already taken care of our fees. So be sure to take part in our free resources. For the Los Angeles network, which is the network that I represent, we have locations throughout the Los Angeles, Santa Barbara, and Ventura counties, and they're represented on the map in front of you. Again, we offer no cost business advising, and so you're able to set up one-on-one consultations or appointments with incredible people like Lori Williams, who's our financial guru. She's like the magician of all numbers, all knowing for sure, as well as those who are experts in marketing, business planning, certifications, regardless of what you're looking for, what you might need for your business, we have business experts for you. We also offer virtual trainings, much like the training you have joined today. So finally, we are here to help you. Be sure to get in contact with us via phone 866-588-7232 or online smallbizla.org/new client. And for those of you who have reached us outside of the Los Angeles area, please go to americassbdc.org/find your SBDC. And then finally, Lori, I was just going to mention California Dream Fund. Today's the last day to register for our training program. So please go to smallbizla.org/dream fund. Again, this is for brand new businesses, and it's offering micro grants in the amounts of $5,000 and $10,000. Any questions, I'll be sure to add the URL into our chat so that you can take a look at it there. With that, Lori, a quick housekeeping. Any questions? Do we still want those to go into the Q&A?
Yeah, let's go ahead and just put anything in the chat today, because I'm just going to hang out in the chat, because I'm going to ask for the audience, this is a little insight, to be completely participating in this week.
Perfect. Okay, great. Well then, and you can also look to the chat for additional links that Lori's going to cover, as well as links to like the form, Lori, if they have questions that they'd like to ask after the show, or if they have any suggestions for future shows, as well as links to our YouTube so that they can see previous shows. So with that, I am going to hand it all the way over to you.
Perfect. And Lauren, you'll watch the chat for me in case anybody has questions or interactions that I'm missing. Normally I catch it, but if I totally miss something, let me know. So guys, let me just do some quick introduction stuff as far as upcoming classes that I'm holding, and Lauren's going to put this in the chat as well. I have my Finance Literacy Session 1, which is an overview of basic accounting requirements. Finance Literacy Session 2, which is financial management, really gets into cost structure. People heard me talk about that. I just announced my new sales tax seminar coming up in July 7th. I'm going to talk a little bit about sales tax things today, but these are the 3 classes that I have. And I also want to mention that next week we have Jeannie Bones going to come on, and she's going to tell a very fascinating story. A longtime owner of a restaurant, and what happened is during COVID, she of course went through the closings, the regulations, everything that happened, worked through it successfully to be able to keep the company open, and then decided, at least kind of like selling stocks when it's on an upswing, they took a moment, they made a very hard emotional decision, decided to sell the restaurant, went through a broker, hired a broker, went through all the processes of selling the restaurant, and now is in a new endeavor. And she's going to share every bit of the experience, as well as, facts to know if you ever have to sell, what it was like working with a broker, etc. The week after that, Sylvia Garcia is going to talk about her restaurant startup. Excuse me, my voice is going today. Not a good thing for someone who makes a living talking. And the week after that, Elbin's going to talk about, I put international sales, but it's really a sales and marketing. So that's what to look for coming up. So this is what we're going to do today. It's going to be a combination of some things. Of course, I'm going to show you an Excel document. I can't go without showing you an Excel document. That's going to be in a bit. But I'm really inviting the audience to ask any questions, participate. We're going to have a general chat. I do have an agenda that I'm going to go through, but it's a very loose agenda, so you can intersect any information at any given time or any questions or anything you want to talk about. So this is how I've arranged it. I am going to be just basically giving you a bunch of little miscellaneous statements, tidbits, advice, information. Some of it is based on some of the experiences I've had in the last 2 weeks with clients. You know, usually what's interesting is when somebody asks one question, somebody else asks the same question. And it's been really strange because it doesn't even matter if the question seems very unique. I've been getting like the same question on some things that are very, very unique. So what I've done is I've got like a consortium of things where I'm just going to say, this is a myth, this isn't true, this is what you heard, don't do this, etc. So here we get started. Okay, legal and tax. That's my first subject matter that I'm going to address. And some of these things may apply to you, some of them may not. Some of them may apply to you, but I'm not speaking in enough detail. You can get in touch with me through Lauren. We can have a one-on-one to go in detail, because I'm not meant to go in detail on any of this, but to just throw it out there in case you don't have an awareness or am involved in it. So one of the biggest myths that drives me up a wall that I hear people say all the time and act on is they think, okay, the first step to being in business is opening an LLC, or I wanted to be a legit business, so I opened an LLC. Guys, this is not why you open an LLC. So the first thing I want to tell you that's shocking. Now, I cannot say this percentage is an exact percentage. It's been some years since this analysis was done, but it was when I was studying for my enrolled agent certification through the IRS that I became knowledgeable of this number, that approximately 82% of the companies in United States function as a sole prop. Yes, function as a sole prop. If you were to ask people in LA especially, how do companies function? Oh, they're all incorporated. This is Hollywood talk, as I like to say. I can't stand Hollywood talk. And what I mean by that is entrepreneurship, when it went mainstream into Hollywood, it got all these fictitious beliefs attached to it, and people are making decisions based on these fictitious beliefs. Now, why am I saying that you don't make your first step to go into an LLC? When you choose to incorporate in any type of incorporation, you're choosing it for the most part based on risk. You feel as though your assets could be at risk if you are to be sued. Now, in this, you got to say, what's the chance of being sued? I have people, I'm exaggerating to communicate, but not that far, that say, oh, I live in an apartment, I lease a house, and I'm starting a marketing company, and I need to incorporate because I don't want to be sued. I'm like, okay, I know a lot of marketing companies that possibly should be sued. Okay, that was a joke, guys. But nobody in a marketing company gets sued for not getting results. The problem with just going ahead and incorporating is that you have the expense to incorporate, you have the legal requirements, you have accounting situations you have to come in. So a lot of times operating as a sole prop, which is the default just status of being in business, is the easiest and simplest. I always say it this way. Sometimes you want to go down the road a little bit more to see where the company's going before you just choose to jump into an incorporation status. It would be like saying, well, I think that I really like this person that I'm going to do online dating. Never done online dating, so I'm not speaking of experience here, but it's a good analogy. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to marry them instead. You don't do that. You don't just jump into marriage. And anybody who's had to deal with a divorce can comment on that, right? So you have to look at incorporation as something you want to spend time thinking about. I always say one of the advantages and greatest disadvantages, the ease in which people can set up LLCs now. And so they've just gone crazy. I have seen people set up 4 or 5 LLCs because they think, well, I have a different product line, so I'm going to set up a different LLC. These become legal and financial nightmares that can come back on you. So a lot of times just being default sole prop and operating on that forever or for some years till you see what's going down. So all I'm saying in this is get advice and think it through before you just jump in and go online and fill out some LLC papers. The other thing that people have a confusion on is they say, well, I'm going to form an LLC because it's taxed differently than a sole prop. No, not true. That's another false thing. An LLC, is, you might have seen, is considered a disregarded entity. A IRS and the IRS eyes, an LLC is considered a self-employed person, no different than a sole prop. You use a Schedule C. If it's an LLC multi-member, it's considered a partnership. You use a 1065, which basically breaks up the expenses, etc. So LLCs give you no tax advantage. S corps do, but you have to get to a certain amount of profit to overcome the additional expense required to be an S corp. Okay. So the one thing you want to be conscious of is that you go on Google, you find a little bit of information. I see people setting up their own S corps, doing all kinds of crazy stuff. Just don't take this stuff lightly. I guess that's what I'm going to say, is just don't take that lightly. And Paula, I see, yes, there is an annual fee for an LLC in California of $800. Now it's been, I forget the words they're using legally, but if you create an LLC within a certain time period right now, you're not responsible for it for the first year as a way to promote new companies, but then you're responsible for it year over year. And Paula, I'm going to use your comment to go into something I was going to speak in a second. People set up these LLCs and they think just because they're not using them, they're not doing business on them, that they're dissolved. No, you have to go through an official documentation to dissolve. It's kind of like saying, well, I was married, but I don't want to be anymore, so I'm just done. No, you got to get a divorce decree, right? You understand that concept. It's the same with having a company. So you can get in this really challenging loop where every year you're in business, you are required to pay the 800. If you don't pay the 800, your company gets suspended. Until you dissolve the company, you continue to incur the 800 and the penalties, but you can't dissolve the company until all past bills are paid. So you're going to have to pay the past 800 penalties, however many years, to dissolve the company, or it's going to continue to cause new expenses, new amounts, new fees, I should say, plus fines. And I've seen people say, well, I didn't dissolve the company and now I own this money, so I need to dissolve it. I'm like, you need to pay the fine. But I don't have the money. Well, you need to. So, you really have to realize that you are playing with fire if you get engaged in these type of partnerships, LLCs, all this type of thing without really knowing what you're doing. Okay. The other thing that's a misnomer is people think that a DBA or a fictitious name is required for a sole prop. Let me clarify what this is. So sole props by default. Say this afternoon, I decide that I'm going to start making soap and selling soap. Now, I always come up with these weird things. I don't know how to make soap or sell soap, but I just make the stuff up, right? So if I decided that and I made some soap and I went down to the farmer's market and I sold some soap, or I just went to my neighbors and say, hey, you want to buy some soap? And they said, yeah. So I sold them some soap. I am in the default status of a sole prop. So I didn't do anything. All I did was do transactions in a business manner, and then I am in a sole prop. So it's the default status, just by default, right? So I say, well, hey, how do you want me to pay for your soap? I go cash or write a check to Lori Williams. So, I'm in the sole prop. I'm a sole prop. I'm the same as an LLC for taxation. I'm selling soap, right? Well, then I want to call my soap really cool soap. I want to call it Lori's Cool Soap. So I go out and I market Lori's Cool Soap. And I tell somebody says, well, I wrote you a check to Lori's Cool Soap. Well, the problem is my bank account says Lori Williams. They can't accept a check called Lori's Cool Soap, right? So I need a DBA doing business as Lori's Cool Soap that I can get and take to the bank and say, can you also put the name DBA Lori's Cool Soap? So when somebody writes me a check to Lori's Cool Soap, I can deposit it. So a DBA is nothing more than allowing you to conduct business other than your surname or your company name. I'm going to come back to that, and be able to do financial transactions and put money in your bank account. That's the purpose of a DBA. So if I want to be a sole prop called Lori Williams and I consult and you write checks to Lori Williams, I don't need a DBA. If I want to be a company and I want to market under different product lines, I don't need to start another company. I just do a DBA. So for years, I had DBAs, and I still do in my company, to focus on when I'm doing more high level consulting, to selling my books. I have different names, and they're just DBAs under the same company. So a DBA is not associated to a sole prop specifically. A DBA is just allowing you to do financial transactions in a name other than your surname, your own name, or your company name. That's what it means. And it's also called a fictitious name. So people get confused about that. They also think if I start a sole prop, I got to get an EIN number. Not true. An EIN number has certain times it's required, and that's obtained through the IRS, such as if you hire employees. If I'm a sole prop and I have employees, yes, a sole prop can hire employees. People think, okay, I got to be an LLC to hire employees. No, sole props can. That's when you might need to get an EIN. Now, you can choose to get an EIN with a sole prop if you don't want to use your social security number on forms, but it's a choice. And when you do that, you have to be consistent, but it's not a requirement, okay? So when it comes to legal, I'm really saying just be real conscious of how these things work, and don't jump into it without having an understanding of the necessity, the fees, and the requirements, especially separate accounting systems and stuff like that. Now, another thing while I'm on the tax level is people think, well, you get to choose whether or not you want to pay in tax estimates. You probably know off the top of your head that's not true, okay? So quarterly tax estimates, the reason you want to pay them in is because the IRS is what's known as, and I didn't make these words up, these are IRS statements, it's a pay-as-you-go system. So just like if you were an employee and they take taxes out of your check as you go along, they don't want you to owe them money at the end of the year because they know, well, you've already spent it, right? You're not going to have the money. So they want you to pay in. But when you're an employee, the government has laws that says taxes must be taken out of a paycheck, right? When you're a company owner, the government doesn't have that umbrella of control to go and take the money. So what it does instead is it requires you to make payments through penalties. Think of it this way. If I was driving my car and I needed to do 35 miles per hour in this area, the police can't control my foot. I have control over my foot, okay? They're not controlling my foot. So how do they make me want to control my foot to 35 miles an hour? They have a penalty. It's a speed ticket, right? Okay. Well, it's the same thing for tax estimates. They have what's called an underpayment penalty. So what they do is the underpayment penalty is based on either you must by the end of the year pay in 100% of what tax was owed the previous year, or 90% of what tax is owed this year. Most people don't know what 90% of the tax they're going to owe this year. So they pay in quarterly payments 100% of what was paid last year, avoiding a tax paying penalty. That's why most tax preparers set people up with coupons. If you hadn't had any profit, you hadn't to pay in any taxes the previous year, you don't owe anything. So what I see is people have year over year losses. They don't pay in. Then they do have a profitable year and they think not paying in estimates is still a choice. I say this before the first estimate is due so people know about that. Okay. I'm going to go here into the chat because there's some things that I want to read to answer the question. I'm going to thumb down to this one that's easier to read. It's a couple sentences. If you just have one or two people helping me seasonally, do I need an EIN? Good question. Yes, you do. Because if, you know what? I'm going to say, yes, you do. I'm going to answer this question, but hold this thought, guys, because I'm going to bring up something else I wanted to bring up, and it's about AB5, commission-only salespeople, and seasonal employees. So hold that thought, and I'm going to come back to that. I want to go to this one up here that was written in pretty soon into the chat, pretty early, and I'm multitasking here. What's your forecast? Gotcha. Survivor recession. Gotcha. We're going to talk about that. So I'll get back to that. I just wanted to make sure I read that really quick. So I'm going to go into the seasonality, and I'm going to pick up and talk about a couple other things as well. The question that I've gotten like 2 or 3 times, which is a really strange question. It's not a strange question at all. It's a very interesting and important question, but it's amazing that I got the question from 3 different people within 2 weeks. So I want to address it. The situation that people are experiencing, and the questions positioned from different situations that people are in, but the commonality is that, with the pandemic, many people, either didn't have an employee or let go of an employee, or, had a different situation. And so now what they're needing to do is they need to get basically help. They need somebody to come into their company, do some things, but they don't have enough work, as they say, for a full-time employee. And they want to know, what are my options? Can I hire them as an independent contractor? Can I pay commission only to them? Can I, make them a partner to avoid some of these other things? Those were little like summaries of some of the questions. So what I'm going to do is I want to create now an answer that puts things in a certain order. Now, some of you may be familiar with AB5. That's Cap A, Cap B, and number 5. It was a legislation that was passed in 2019. You may be familiar with it because in California, there was this big vote for the ride share, Uber, in one of the ones in the forefront, but this ride share on whether that the people who drove for these companies could be considered independent contractors or not. So this came out some time ago in 2019. I don't remember exactly when, but it was a really challenging law, and personally it's not one that I'm in favor of, just personally, but I'll explain why. What it did is there always was a certain test on whether somebody was classified as an independent contractor or an employee. If they're an employee, you have to pay in the taxes. You have to make sure that you have a payroll company. You have to have workman's comp. It's a lot more expense for an employee. That's a given, right? Independent contractors is just, you can create the relationship and pay as you deem fit. Well, when AB5 came into play, they put another layer on the classification when somebody must be an employee. And it was part B, and it said if the worker, the task, is part of the normal course of business, they must, according to California law in California, be an employee. So the state of California even gave an example. If I was a dress manufacturer and I had somebody at their house making patterns for dresses, patterns are part of the normal course of business, they must be an employee. If they are working on my computer to fix my computer, that's not my normal course of business, they can be an independent contractor. So as many of you may know, AB5 changed dynamic of small businesses because yoga instructors could no longer be independent contractors, hairstylists could not be independent contractors, really went through quite a lot, right? And so with AB5, it wasn't mentioned during the pandemic, so almost forgotten, but I want to bring people full circle. It's still in existence. So if the person you're hiring is going to be performing the normal task of business, technically you have to hire them as an employee. Now, the seasonal question. If you have somebody only working seasonally or only working a few hours or coming in and teaching a yoga, then it's a temporary employee, but it's still an employee. It's still requiring workman's comp, still requiring EIN. It's requiring all those aspects. You cannot in California pay somebody commission only unless you've already met minimum wage requirements. So commission only can be paid, but they have to at least be getting a minimum wage. So it really makes it challenging. I mean, I don't know how else to say it. It makes it challenging for small companies that want somebody to come in and work just for a little bit of time. And they are doing what is considered the normal course of business because it leads you to have to hire them as an employee, even if it's temporary. And there's a certain number of hours. I don't recall it right off the top of my head, but if they work that amount of hours per year, then you have to have sick time. So you really start going down a road. Now, if you are hiring what's called a bona fide business relationship, where they're in business, they have their own permits, they have their own license, like me, I'm in business, I have several clients, not several clients, I have clients, right? Meaning that would not be my only client, right? I have all my permits, I'm, incorporated, I've been in business, I have all this stuff going on. I don't have to be concerned about somebody, whether they're hiring me as an independent contractor. I am a bona fide business relationship. So people try to do a workaround and say, well, can I hire them as a business? But they're not really qualified because they're not in their own company. They don't have permits and you are their only client. So that's not a workaround. I've also had people say, well, what if I make them a percent owner? Oh my God, that's crazy talk. You're getting into creating a equity position for a person that you want to pay commission only. That was part of the questions. You just don't want to do that. So, you know, my summary in this conversation is, remember, AB5 is still in effect. There are some exemptions, but not a lot. Bona fide business exemption is very strict. If you are having somebody do work that's in the usual course of the business, keep in mind about AB5. Heather, workman's comp is needed if you have employees. If you don't have employees, workman's comp is not necessary. Now, if you're at home or not at home, the minute you have an employee, then you definitely need it, okay? So it's all about having an employee. I think I got all the questions. If I missed any, Lauren, you let me know, okay? Because I'm scrolling down to the next section. So if I missed any, you let me know. I want to talk about sales permits right now. A lot of confusion on this. If you, first of all, if you're selling, like, even technically, if I'm selling at a garage sale, okay, if I have, I think, and don't quote me on this number, I'm going from the top of my head, but I think it's 3. I think if I have 3 garage sales in a year, I'm supposed to have a seller's permit, right? Seller's permit has to do with charging sales tax on products and some labor, that I'm selling. And so where I'm seeing the confusion is I see people that are selling things through Shopify, and they believe that Shopify or other types of websites are collecting sales tax on their behalf, and they may just be attaching it to the invoice, but not collecting it, remitting it on their behalf. So the words you have to look for is collecting and remitting on your behalf to make sure it's followed properly. So in this case with Shopify, all it does is it adds sales tax to the invoice. So I'm seeing this happen. And if you follow me on what I'm saying, guys, people believe that they are following the sales tax requirements because they check the little box on Shopify to add sales tax on an invoice. But technically what they're doing is they're charging sales tax, having it submitted to their bank account. So they're charging sales tax without a seller's permit. It's going in their own personal bank account, and they're not resubmitting it to the government. That is like fraud 101. Okay, I'm going to collect sales tax from you with no permit, and then I'm going to keep it. So unfortunately, unbeknown to these people, I've had people just making jewelry and selling it at Shopify and not realizing they're committing big fraud by not charging sales tax. So I changed my upcoming sales seminar from, you know, confused about sales tax to should you be charging sales tax, to get people to ask that question. Another thing on sales tax I want to mention is that people have this other myth. They believe that if I'm selling out of state, out of California, I don't have to charge sales tax. That was true prior to, I think it was 2015, 2016, can't remember the exact date. This is no longer true. There was a court case. It was Wayfair versus South Dakota. South Dakota does not charge any state tax. You don't pay state tax if you're a South Dakota resident. So what South Dakota was saying is, hey, anybody who sells into our state, since we make our money, our government money, you know, our taxation off of sales tax, we want the right to say, if you sell into South Dakota, you're going to have to charge sales tax because that's our rules. And so the Supreme Court said, yeah, we're going to go for that. It got passed because they said South Dakota wasn't trying to, you know, collect past money. They were not trying to hurt anything economically. They're just saying, hey, our residents pay sales tax. It used to be they all went in stores. Now they're going more online. So they need to put sales tax and charge it and resubmit it to South Dakota. So the minute that South Dakota versus Wayfair got passed by the Supreme Court, other states jumped on board and said, okay, well, we want you to charge sales tax in my state. So technically what you have to do is you have to look at the website for each of the states to determine if you have to open up a seller's permit. Many of them have minimums, like until you make 3 sales, or until you sell 100,000, or until you sell 5,000. They're all different, right? But you have to know. So if you have any questions on this, please take my sales tax seminar, because I'm seeing people get audited and fined from the Franchise State Board and then getting liens on their house. Literally, I'm not making this stuff up, because they owe back sales tax. So you really, really need to understand that. I want to catch up on some things. Let's see, I think I got that. Let's see, got that. Uber and Lyft won the last election. You're actually correct, Chuck. Let me bring this together. I kind of didn't, but I'll bring it. Since you're asking, Chuck, I'll bring it together. Okay. Well, and again, you know, I'm giving you Lori's personal opinion on this plus some facts. Okay. AB5 came on the books in 2019. And it was not something anybody voted on. It just was legislation put it on, right? So suddenly all of these companies are going to have to, we're having to scramble and say, do I have to make them an employee? Do I have to make an employee? And unfortunately, it was right before the recession. So it really hurt companies because they put them on board. Now, the legislation, the different bodies that wrote and endorsed and passed AB5 was doing it on I'm not trying to be political here, but there is political situations, obviously went up for vote. So I have to discuss politics a bit, and I apologize for it, but I have to explain this. So they did it on a political platform saying that, these companies are paying people as independent contractors, and that's really bad because they're not getting benefits, and we're going to protect these people and make you forced to hire them as employees. And, of course, it was far reaching because there was no minimum in sales. So it affected the small-time yoga instructor, just like it could affect Uber and Lyft and other companies, right? So they said, we're going after Uber and Lyft. Well, in an interesting chain of events, because I watched it since AB5 was a proposal and said, please don't do this. This is so hard on the small companies. Please don't do this, right? So they pass it. Then Uber and Lyft say, well, you know what? We're going to pull out of California because we'd have to turn everybody into an employee. And then what ends up happening, as you probably know, Chuck, it goes on the ballot for voting. And so AB5 now has an exemption for rideshare, which is Uber and Lyft. So Uber and Lyft, the people they claim they were going to go after, are exempt from the law, but you guys, the small yoga instructor, still have to abide by AB5. So that vote was just to say, okay, Uber and Lyft doesn't have to follow the rule. I'm using Uber and Lyft because you mentioned it, but it's really rideshare companies, right? So rideshare companies don't have to follow AB5, but you still have to follow AB5. So there is no difference other than that was the way it worked out politically to exempt them. Statute of limitations for non-payment of an employee on salary. There is not a statute of limitations, and I'm not sure exactly where you're coming from on this. So I'm just going to answer in vague, but there are certain things that don't have statute of limitations. People think, you have certain statute of limitations on everything, but when it comes to not paying employees, that's the scariest thing, whether it's a mistake or not. Like I had somebody who did a QuickBooks payroll, and the computer, whether they didn't set it up right or QuickBooks, I don't know, right? But they basically took taxes from some employees, but not others, and then did not submit it to the government. And so that technically is fraud, and there's no statute of limitations. So when it comes to situations with employee and labor, those are under a complete different umbrella. And the best resource is you can go through the Labor Department, California Department of Labor. They got a website that you can look through for different laws, or you reach out to labor attorneys if it's at that point. You have to get people that actually specialize in labor. But I always tell people, you don't mess with somebody's labor. You don't mess with employees, because employees, sales tax, IRS. In fact, guys, I tell you what, just to give you an example, I would rather a company owe the IRS than employee anything, or sales tax. They'll come after you harder and more aggressive than the IRS with no compromise, options. So those are much more scary to have, okay? I think I got everything. Lauren, if I'm missing anything, let me know. So moving on, excuse me. Let's see, now what we're gonna do is we gotta have an Excel document, right? So I got 20 minutes left. I gotta throw an Excel document in. So first I'm going to do some accounting myths, and then I'm going to show you an Excel document. So accounting myths. I need to have a software package like QuickBooks to record my financial data. No, you do not. You do not. According to the IRS, all it has to have is accuracy. For many of the startups or small companies that don't have a lot of transactions, I use an Excel document. I don't get involved in having a QuickBooks software package that they don't understand. They're not putting in the data correctly. So you don't have to. So if you're starting a business, you don't have to be an LLC, and you don't have to have QuickBooks, okay? You can operate as a sole prop, and you can use an Excel document. And please get out of your head to use free accounting apps. I have this thing where, I'm using a free accounting app. What are you thinking of? Not only is there a security issue, which is the least of my concerns, free means I can take it away at any minute. The IRS demands you have that knowledge or those documents of your accounting for 3 years. You may want to go back and have it. Putting your information in a free accounting system or using a free accounting system for invoicing is crazy. So I always say to somebody, you know, I'm doing these short little speeches right now instead of my long version. If you feel as though what you're doing is so safe that you will put in your bank account, your 401 account number, all your balances, your phone number, and your social security number, great. If you, I ask people that question, they go, oh no, and I go, then why are you using it for your company's accounting? It's the same thing. It's financial data that is reported to outside people like the IRS. So don't be crazy and use free stuff. Please stop doing that. Syncing data with QuickBooks is a seamless approach to limit or no effort accounting. No, guys. I say this all the time. 99.9% of the company's balance sheets that I look at from QuickBooks Online syncing the data are incorrect. Take a look at your balance sheet. If you have a negative bank account, you have any weird negative numbers, this might mean that you've got an issue with your online syncing. You know, you have to think about it logically. Finance is a major component of running a company. People spend much more time on marketing and zero time on finance, thinking I can just sync everything together and it's going to be all magical. No, that's just crazy thoughts. It's just not so. So what you want to do is you want to respect the discipline of finance and accounting in your company. Spend ample time doing it. Make sure your numbers are accurate, make sure you're consistent, and make sure you're efficient. So with that, I'm going to go into an Excel document, but I'm going to come back. Yes, Chuck, a yoga studio with instructors who conduct a class only once or twice a week still has to pay them in employees. Unfortunately, I hate that answer, but it doesn't matter. Could be a couple hours or whatever. It has to be paid as an employee. So yep, that's absolutely true. Okay, give me a second while I get a share going with an Excel document here, guys. Everybody, my frequent flyers know how much I like Excel. Okay, I have Lauren. Now the little link I gave you a little bit ago with the verbiage, can you throw it in there for me so people can follow what I'm saying? So I'm using Excel to demonstrate some verbiage I'm speaking. So and Lauren's going to throw it into the chat because I emailed her the verbiage ahead of time. So what I'm talking about now, guys, is the minimum amount of financial management activities that every company should do, including my soap company I made up. The minimum amount of activities. You've got it there in the chat. I'm going to demonstrate it because what's going to happen is you're going to look at it and go, oh my God, I can't do all that. So first of all, look at the chat, guys, okay? So let's announce what they are. Know your profit margin after you sell your services and goods. You've got to know this. If you have labor, you use an hourly rate for your own labor. The number can be around what you would pay for someone else to do. So at minimum, you've got to know how much does it cost to produce my goods or services? What selling price am I using? What is my gross profit? Minimum, you must know that. Minimum, you must know what are my monthly and yearly expenses. You must know what your monthly and yearly expenses are. You ready for this one? This one you're going to go, oh my God, how do you figure that out? That's so scary. Know how many widgets you must sell to reach $1 profit, net profit, net profit. You must know how many widgets you must sell to reach $1 net profit. I know it sounds scary. I'm going to take away that scare in a minute, okay? You must know how many widgets you would like to sell to meet your ideal profit and set that as a benchmark. You must know that. I mean, if you think about it, anybody who's been an employee when you're starting out, you know what salary, if I walked up to somebody, we don't discuss these things in public, obviously, but if I walk up and say, what salary do you make to pay your bills? Well, I got to make this just to pay my bills. What salary would you like to make? I'd like to make this. They'd be able to answer those two questions in seconds. Like I said, not publicly, but let's pretend for a second, okay? Well, it's the same thing in business. You got to know how much you have to sell in order to be able to at least have $1 net profit, and you have to know your ideal amount. So I'm not asking anything that personally you wouldn't answer. It's just you don't understand how to answer it in a business fashion, but I'm going to show you that. Okay, then you must monitor your monthly performance by updating the Excel document, which I'm going to show you. It can be a piece of paper and a crayon, okay? It doesn't have to be Excel. Everybody knows that I think all world problems can be solved with an Excel document. So that's just my bias towards Excel. But it could be a calculator and a crayon, your kids' crayons for all that matters, right? But you must monitor monthly performance, and you must use a forecast as a ready for this line? Okay, it sounds like a weird sentence because I wrote it. It's a weird sentence. Use a forecast as a what must happen, then what may happen. Okay, so I told the audience participation. Everybody sees that list. How many people go, oh my God, I don't know how to do that? Can you at least say, well, that sounds good. I should do it, but I'm confused. I'm not sure how to do that, right? Well, are you guys paying attention to me? I'm going to go through each one of these and I'm going to show you, as I always do with the Excel document. I didn't start with a total blank Excel document like I do often because I wanted something there so you could see what I was talking about. Okay, let's go back. Number one, I said, you have to know the profit margin after you sell your goods or service and use an internal hourly rate for your own for your own labor. Know the profit margin after you sell your goods as a service. So I just threw numbers in there, guys, just threw numbers in. Selling price of one unit, I'm going to sell it for $15. My cost of one unit, it costs me to produce it for one unit, $8. If I'm making my soap, that is the whatever goes in soap, I don't know, but those materials that go to make soap, right? That is the labor for how long it takes me to make soap based on maybe what I would pay somebody else if I had to hire them to make the soap. I'm just going to put it in a plastic bag in my little mindset right now. So it's the cost of a plastic bag, and I'm going to have a little sticker that says Lori Soap and puts a price on it. That's all I'm going to do. So that cost of one unit is the plastic bag, the price of one sticker, the price of all the stuff that goes into making soap, and my time as a amount I would normally have to pay somebody else to do it. I'm not going to say, I'm a CFO, I get $300 an hour, so that means it's this much to make a soap. No, it's a comparable wage to making soap. So that's the cost of one unit. That's how much it is in my soap thing. So I'm going to take 15 minus 8 equals 7. So every single time I sell one bar of soap, I'm going to sell for 15. I'll turn this into my soap story right now, making all this up. It cost me $8. I've got $7 gross profit to make a soap. Everybody got that one? Pretty cool on that? Any questions? I think we're good. Now, you want to calculate that for each product, and you want to update it always if the cost or selling price changes. You always update it. If you're selling a bunch of products, you can use a blended rate. You can do an average, or if I have a soap that's 30 with a profit margin of more 10 and another soap that's 50, I'm making numbers up, so I'm just making them up at random, and it's a profit margin that's more like 25, I'm going to use a weighted average. That's where I'm saying this amount of units times this profit margin to this amount of units times this profit margin. So I can do a lot of things when I got various products, but at the basis, I need to know that, okay? I need to know my monthly and yearly expenses. I wrote down some expenses. I wrote down how much they were per month. I multiplied by 1 year. Pretty simple. We got that. Now, guys, here where we go. No magic tricks. I'm going to take this information and I'm going to take this information and I'm going to answer the rest of the questions. This is where it gets fun. Okay. How many widgets do I need to sell to be a dollar profit? I don't know. Let's figure this out. So here's the question I'm asking. This is the data before. I know that it's $15 for how much I'm going to sell a unit, $8 for the cost of the unit, 15 minus 8, $7 gross profit. Nothing complicated, okay? So now what I did is I took this little chart and all I did was I said, this is my overhead per month, okay? This is my overhead per year. Nothing complicated. It's the data you already seen. Very, very simple, right? So now I have to figure out how many units do I need to sell in order to be a dollar profit. So here's where we go, guys. Throw a number out. It's a small number. It's a small amount. You can see that my monthly expenses are $290 per year. As I made it up here, it's $3,480. These are negative numbers because I have no sales. How many units do you think I have to sell in order to be profitable? 5 units, 6 units, 8 units? Anybody want to take a gander? Oh, 539 would surely do it. I think it's actually a high number. Let's start a little bit lower. I don't think I need to sell 539 because remember my gross profit's 7. Let's try a lower number. I like where we're going. And Angela, we're going to go back and throw your number in a second because I'm going to use that number. But it's probably more somewhere around, I don't know, I'm guessing 50, 100. Anybody want to make another guess? Give me a number to throw in there. 50. Let's go with 50. Okay. So what I'm going to do is, first of all, before I put this in, if I sell 50 at 15, ready? Trick question. Deep. How many units did I produce? If I sell 50 units at $15, how many units did I produce? If I put 15 here, how many units do I have to put there? Dot, 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 dot. See this little arrow? I must match. I must match. Okay. So it's the same quantity. So if I sell 15 units or 50, I'm sorry, I keep getting my numbers messed up. 50. I'm going with, was it, I'm not sure how to say the name. So I'm going to say TM. I don't want to mess it up. I'm going to take TM's number of 50. I'm going to sell 50 units at $15. Okay. So that means I'm going to also have to produce 50 units. This is just the math. This is just the math. That's all it is. It's 15 units at 15. I'm going to keep doing this. 50 units at $15 sell price times 50 units at $8 cost. That's all it is. It's doing the math. And then it's subtracting it for $3.50. Yay! You were right. Look at, I got more than $1 profit. I have $60 profit. Okay. So what I've done is I've just taken the math and I can even say, okay, let's see, let me go 45. Okay, hold on. We're going to go back to the formula. Hold on. We're going to go back to the formula. So we have it, Liz. Okay. You ready, Liz? This is for you and everybody else. You just were the one that asked the question. Okay, Liz, what I'm taking is the number of units sold. Sorry, I'm typing in, talking here, times the selling price. Okay, so in here, what this is, it's the number of units sold. I missed a D here. Number of units sold times the selling price. So in other words, 15 times, in this case, 45. Okay, so in this case, TM, when you're asking about if you had a production minimum of 150 but only sold 50, excellent question. But TM, we're doing a different type of calculation here. We're not looking at how much is in inventory, okay? Because if you had a production minimum of 150, 50 of them are sold and 100 is in inventory, okay? So that happens where the 100 is over here in inventory. We're not going to take that number into calculation. This is why the arrow is. The only way this can be correct is if I match the quantity that is sold to the quantity is produced so I can get a correct profit margin. So it's not necessarily that you're over invested. It's that when we are working with financial management numbers, I want you to think about the fact that it's not static, it's dynamic. I want you to picture that here's a toolbox, right? And in the toolbox are all these numbers. I have to think, what do I want to analyze? What do I want to understand? What do I want to know? And then I pull out the numbers and I align them in a way to get the answer. So I would be looking at the 150 purchased on a cash flow statement. I would be looking at it to see maybe a cost perspective, but I'm not using the 150 in this example. And that's where I always tell people you have to understand that accounting is just gathering data to fill out tax returns. Financial management is figuring out how to align the numbers properly so you can do an analysis. So in this, I am taking certain data, and all I have to do is I have to figure out what is the selling price for one unit, just as you see here, what is the cost per one unit, the gross profit is these numbers subtracted. This, all I did was say I sold 45, so I have to look at 45 produced, and this number is the selling price times the quantity. That's all it is. So it literally is 15, which is my selling price, times, in this case, 45 quantity equals 675. That's where that number came from right now. The second line is $8 cost times $15, or I'm sorry, $8 times 45, $8 times 45. That's the quantity I sold equals 360. Okay, that's all it's doing. Then it's saying 675, trying to multitask here, minus 360 equals 315. And if you look at it, 315 is the money left over, to pay my overhead expenses. So once you have the money left over to pay the overhead expenses, I have $25 left. That's where this number is coming from, okay? And so if you turn around and say, how many, so let's go back to perhaps the last number, how many do I have to sell per year to be $1 profit? What number should we throw in there? Oh, and while you guys are putting a number, cost of goods, let's talk about cost of goods sold, Chuck. I'm glad you asked that. I usually answer that. So cost of goods sold, which is the cost of one unit, is the cost directly, notice the word directly involved in the production of a goods or product. So in my soap, that's when I said the bag, the sticker, the raw materials, my labor. I don't include the amount for selling. I don't include the amount for admin. I don't include rent. I don't include the amount of a factory. I am only looking at the products that are required to, the raw materials that are required to make the product. 45 is not times 12 because I'm saying that this is the quantity is sold per year or per month. I'm answering your question. It's the amount sold per month. So I'm saying on a monthly basis, remember, these are monthly overhead expenses. This is how much it is per month. So if I say, how many units do I have to sell this month in order to pay my bills and have money left over? That's all I'm doing. Think about it personally. How much money do I need to make to pay the rent and the groceries and the kids and all that stuff and have enough money left over so we can go to the movies? Okay, everybody understands that. Okay, everybody gets that. How much money do we have to bring home so we can pay all of our household bills and have enough money to take the kids to the movies? You get that sentence, okay? How much money do we have to sell in order to produce the product and have enough money left over to pay for the overhead bills and have money left over at the end of the month? Same scenario. And then all I did here was I say this times the amount. And oh, I see, Marianne, you're saying on the quantity, is it 45 times 12? Well, let's see. So let's go down here and say equals 45 times 12. I'm sorry, Marianne, I sometimes don't read things and multitask quickly, which is the reason I said, let's go back to the original number. So let's put a 540 in here to end it. Yes, I have $300. Now, at the end, I may say, I don't want to just make $300. Okay, I may be getting paid a little bit of labor here to make the soap, but I don't want to make $300. So this is going back on that very last statement. Use this to determine what it must be, and then determine what it could possibly be, it may be. So let's finish this. Let's say I want to make, I'm making up a number, I want to make about 1,000. I'm just making up a number. Ooh, I like that number. It makes me 70,000. Okay, let's go with that. Okay, I want to make 7,650 at the end of the year. I use small numbers. I don't want to complicate things. I want to make $7,650 per year. How many widgets do I have to sell? in order to make, come on guys, this is the last row, we're ending it. How many widgets do I have to sell in order to make $7,650? Can anybody tell me? D, 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 D. 1590. 1590. 1590 widgets. How much must I sell it at? $15. What must the cost be? $8. This is based on a criteria of 15 selling price times 1,590 widgets. Then this is based on a criteria of $8 cost times 1,590 widgets will yield me 7,650. Then I can look in and say, well, will 1,200 marketing produce that? Can I do that with only 600 rent? Can I do that with 300 internet? Can I do that with insurance? This very, very simple little thing that I showed you, you've got the video, you can watch it again and again, lets me look at and says, it answers every single question we talked about. Know the profit margin after you sell your goods and services. Know the profit margin after you sell the goods and services. Use your own labor cost if needed. Know the total amount of your monthly and yearly. Know the total amount of your monthly and yearly. Know how many widgets you must sell to reach $1. I figured out how many widgets I must sell to pay my overhead to at least get 25 per month. Then know how many widgets you would like to sell to meet your ideal net profit. Set that as a benchmark. I want to sell 1590. This is how much I would need to sell in order to meet my benchmark. Monitor the monthly performance by updating the Excel document with total sales. I didn't sell this month. I only sold 25. Okay, that's the truth. That's what actually happened. I lost $115. So this is the truth. I just monitored. I stuck in how many I actually sold. Consider return in widget sales needed to pay for the expense of marketing. I'm going to increase the marketing to 300 to solve that problem. How many would I have to sell now with my new increase in price? Let me see. Let me just stick a number in. 50 ain't enough. 60 isn't enough. Nope, I need to sell even more. So you can see by me increasing the marketing to 300, I have to increase it by this many widgets to be profitable again. This cute little thing that's very simple that can be done by a calculator and a piece of paper is not that complicated, guys, and it will be able to answer the minimum every single company must know. Okay, I think I'm going to go, let's see. If you closed a business 15 years ago, you got to see if the business name is still available. If it's closed, the business name may be available. So you have to look it up and see if that name is still available to you. On that question, what percentage of home utilities can be written off as overhead for home business? Heather, that's a tax question. So what you want to do is just use a percentage in these type of calculations. It comes to a tax question at the time, and CPAs will kind of tell you what they feel comfortable with, and the law does change often. So it's something you want to just look at the time. Okay, I think I've answered all the questions. I've gone through the Excel document. I've done the same tricks again and again. And this was just my chat with Lori on the things that I've come across that I wanted everybody to have little bits of tidbits of information. Oh, and Paula on the recession. Okay, he didn't answer on the recession. Now I don't have a crystal ball, okay? And I can't say what's going to happen. I cannot. But for me personally, I feel as though it's a time to very much hunker down and be aware of your parameters, just like going back to what I did with the Excel. I said, what must happen, what could happen. There's a lot of situations that are things that don't turn around overnight. You know, inflation doesn't turn around overnight. Economic underlying conditions don't turn around every night. It's not like we have a situation that could swing back immediately. So I am stressing to everybody, especially having gone through the pandemic, having a lot of capital that came into the company over the pandemic that's not coming in again. It's time now to sit down and do this analysis. Plus, a couple of trainings ago, I went through a cash flow statement. Pull up that cash flow statement. You really, really have to make sure that you have the knowledge of what's your current financial health. How much do you have to sell to be profitable? What is your cost? how much cash flow do you have and for how long. It's always been imperative to know the answers to these questions. You need to know them more now than ever. If you don't know the answer to these questions, contact Lauren, get in touch with me. That's how you get a session with me. Lauren, make sure I get your email. I can also answer big business questions. And Gina, on the website of the government, you can go in and you can identify whether or not the name is available. Send the question to Lauren and I'll send you the link if you can't find it. But that's where you check name availability on the Secretary of State website to see if that is available. Okay, I am out of time. I'm out of time, Lauren.
There's no way. It's funny. Who was that made that? Oh, Marty says, can we extend your time for 2 hours each session? We need more Lori.
I was like, I had a longer list I wanted to go through and I didn't get through it all, but I mean, I always say, well, what am I going to talk about? Then I just start talking and I run out of time all the time. But, I really have to say, I'm saying to guys, please pay attention to what I'm doing with the Excel documents. All your answers are in with that Excel documents. I know, Lauren, you've seen it time and time again. Did it make sense? Did you follow what I was doing? It's really quite simple, isn't it?
It really is. And Lori, just to piggyback on what you are on your note, I don't know if you mentioned it this session, but in prior sessions, you don't provide templates.
No.
It's something you want people to go ahead and set that appointment so that you can customize their worksheet with them.
Absolutely. Or you make it. And I'm adamant about not providing templates. I
Right.
will go to my grave never providing you a template. And I do that not to be mean. I do it because I care. I cannot tell you how many people filled out downloaded templates and I say, well, what does this mean? I don't know. What's this number? I don't know. And half the times I'm looking at the templates and I don't know. Until you sit down and make a template, you will not understand. And you saw I demonstrated how I made this. I mean, it took me 10 minutes to make it. You can watch this again, make it in 10 minutes. So you have to, even when I help people, I'm helping them to make it. You have to own the numbers, own the understanding. Remember, at the end of the day, and this is how people treat templates. If a lot of people watching have children, and I know you have young children, right? So when the child comes up and goes, Mommy, look at the colored drawing I did. And you go, oh, that's great. Is it the colored drawing that matters or the activity the child had in coloring the drawing?
100%. It's the activity.
If they just downloaded a colored drawing and brought it to you, did they get any benefit?
No.
Everybody is holding up to me the colored drawing.
Mm-hmm.
That was a great analogy. And the colored drawing just leaves you more tired and more broke. It's coloring the drawing that gives you the knowledge. I have always said knowledge is power. Okay. And I'm going to end on this one thing that I wanted to bring up today. So I'm going to spend 1 minute. I guess I could say this. It's like something I hate saying because it's so true and so sick of saying it, but we're living in scary times financially. Okay. I think even the people that are the most secure financially are a little bit more insecure these days. So we're living in challenging financial times. It's easy to get emotionally scared, upset, all those emotions, right? It's easy. They don't do you any good. They just make you sick. Okay. We all know that. I'm not saying anything anybody doesn't know here. But what I'm saying to you guys is if you take the time to even learn that simplest Excel document I showed you just now, just that alone, you can start plugging in numbers, taking back control, having the understanding, not sitting back and going, what if my rent goes up? Plug in the number and see. What if I sell this many? Plug in the number and see. What if my costs go up? What selling price does it have to be? Plug in the number and see. This will help you to take back control of your financial situation. If you come up with the fact, okay, this is going to be the cold last statement here. If you come up with the fact that with my new cost, my new expense, the market, I can't sell it at this price because there are big companies that can produce it less. I can't sell it at this price. One of two things is going to happen. You're going to realize it today and get out of it before you're in financial situation, just like Jeannie's going to talk about how she made a choice at the top, or you're going to slowly invest all your money and lose it. The answer to if I can't produce it at a lesser amount, I can't increase my selling price, and these are my expenses, and I'm not profitable, that answer won't ever change. It's going to be the same answer. How you choose to deal with the answer is the only difference. It's not changing the answer. So what I'm saying is know the answers so you can make the choice ahead of time. And I'm not saying everybody that does this comes down to have to close their business. In fact, 99% of the people who do this type of behavior on a daily basis don't ever come to that point. It's the one who didn't that does. So these tools give you back your power, give you the knowledge, let you make choices, let you be in control of your company, let you foresee the future instead of sitting there waiting and then not having a choice. Okay.
So good. I don't think we could have ended it on a better note. Thank you, Lori.
You're welcome. See everybody next week for a very powerful discussion. Please join me. Once again, thank you for my frequent flyers. Thank you for the new people here. I hope you become frequent flyers. Thank you for listening for me rambling. If you didn't get your question asked or you need more detail, shout out to Lauren. I'll get back with you. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Lori. We'll see you next week. Everyone, I'll hang on a little bit just so that you guys can make sure you get the links you need out of the chat. Like Lori mentioned, we will see you again next week, Wednesday at 10 a.m. And Jeannie's story is really, really powerful. So I really hope you're able to join us. I think that's it. Thanks so much. Have a great week and happy weekending.